Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, Spencer, I'm so glad you could be here and stick around. That worked out really, really well.
I've got a story for Steve.
Yeah?
Steve, I'm a regular listener of Security Now.
Oh, cool.
And I have an antenna version of the ultrasonic dog killer.
Oh, no kidding.
So here it is. A couple and do we have time for this?
You
Leo?
take all the time you want. You bet.
Okay. So years ago, I guess I was probably around 15 years old. A friend of mine came over looking a little haggard. And I said, "What's going on, Mark?" And he was a fellow Boy Scout. We used to have our Boy Scout troop meetings on Friday nights. And he said, "I'm not getting any sleep." I said, "What's the problem?" He says, "Well, the neighbors next door start playing disco music when I'm trying to sleep, and it's been horrible." So while he's telling me the story,
a radio jammer.
I'm sitting at my desk, and he's telling me the story, and almost without much effort, I put together a little grid dip oscillator out of a little FET that was kicking around, and I wound a little coil, and I built this into a little plastic box with a 9-volt battery. And we took an FM radio, turned it on, and sure enough, I was able to blank out the FM station. Whoop! And I gave him this little box. This is absolutely true. I gave him this little box with a 9-volt battery disconnected and a wire to pull out of the box that needed an antenna, and a little tuning tool. And I said, "Go back, and when you hear the music, just tune this thing in and blank out the music, and you'll be all set. You go to bed." So Mark takes this little box away. He goes to where we grew up in Brooklyn, New York. He lived in a different housing development that I could see a couple of blocks away. And the next week, Friday night, we had our troop meeting, and Mark shows up. And I said, and he had this big smile on his face. I said, "What's going on?" He says, "It worked beautifully." He says, and this is where he added his twist to this whole thing. He says, "I realized I could train my next door neighbors." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I didn't blank out the FM station. I tuned it just off to the side, and it would get all distorted. And they'd go over and they would try a few things. And when they turned the volume down, I turned it off." And he said they turned the volume up later. He said he turned it on, and he would. Oh, the guy is brilliant. He lives up in Vermont right now. I believe he's a chemical engineer.
Operant conditioning. That's great.
And he trained his next door neighbors to keep the volume low, and they never knew they were trained.
It seems to work.
True story. True story.
See, that's a nice solution. They get the radio. He gets his peace and quiet.
Yeah.
Steve, what are those wonderful counters behind you there? It's a great background, but I don't know what they are.
Oh, yeah.
You'll like this, Jerry. They are PDP-8s.
That's so cool.
Oh, for heaven's sake. I had one of those at one time. I made the Boeing company buy me one.
Yeah. Oh, Steve, I found, I'm cleaning up because we're moving to a new location. I found some PDP-8 manuals, the original deck publications. Are you interested?
Sure, absolutely.
How many PDP-8s? Now, some of these are, the ones behind you are homemade, right? They're not real PDP-8s.
Yes, they're recreations of the PDP-8. Then I have about 5 PDP-8Es, a couple 8Ms, an 8F, and then some PDP-11s.
He's been buying these up.
Yeah, ever since you Leo, flashed a plane of core memory on camera a couple years ago, and I thought, I need some core memory. And that started me down this path.
And I wrote a nuclear war simulation in Fortran for a PDP-8 back in, I don't know, 60s sometime.
Well, I think you and Steve should get together because Steve's retirement plan is to, you're going to write an operating system? What are you going to do with that, Steve?
I'm going to start from scratch. And
You're
program
insane.
from the bits up.
I mean, you'll do it. Nobody else I know could. But...
Hey, Steve, you think I'll be able to run my antenna simulations on your operating system?
It needs something to do.
Yeah.
Wasn't Maxima developed on a PDP-8? I believe it was.
What's Maxima?
The MC Maxima,
No, Maxima was developed on a PDP-10, which is a great big honking mainframe.
Yep.
At least physically.
36-bit machine.
Yeah, and I saw it. I saw the machine that Maxima was running on when I was a freshman.
Account on the MC account at MIT back in very early days of this stuff. It was one of the first what you'd call internet at 300 baud. It was me and Minsky and McCarthy and a bunch of other people, and Lowell Wood was on it. And I got a call from Colonel Kane, who said Congress had zeroed out the GPS system from the budget that year. It was going to, they weren't going to build GPS. And I got on that account and told those people, and Lowell Wood was mad enough that he got Teller to send him back to Washington and get it put back in the budget. So that's why we had GPS. It's because of that MC account at MIT, oddly enough.
Well, thank you. I want to say thank you for saving GPS.
Yes,
it wasn't
Jerry,
me.
and Twitter will automatically put your current GPS location into your tweets.
There's quite a difference. I didn't have that kind of influence, but Teller did.
Jerry, I heard that you lived in New Hampshire. Is that correct?
No, Byte magazine was headquartered at Peterborough. I never lived there. I used to have to go there sometimes, but all my staff was at Peterborough.
That's where I'm sitting right now, is in New Hampshire. I'm in Pelham, New Hampshire, which is just north of Boston, about 45 minutes.
Well, Peterborough is where Byte magazine was, in a building that used to be owned by the Guernsey Association. And it had everybody in the office had pictures of cows. And I had a cow picture here. And we never told anybody why. People would come in and they would look and they'd see every wall had a picture of a cow. But nobody would ever explain why. But it turned out we had bought the thing from the American Guernsey Cattle Association.
Were they publishing 73 magazine also? Or no, Ham Radio magazine? That was
Wayne.
Wayne Green.
Wayne's ex-wife was the original publisher of a newsletter called Byte that became Byte magazine, which was then bought by McGraw-Hill for like $7 million or something, which was the best investment McGraw-Hill ever made, because for 30 years, Byte was a gold mine.
Yep.
You guys, there's a diagram showing bars and attenuation. I wanted to point Leo to, just in case you have any other occasion to talk about this.
Sure, where's that?
tech.fortune.cnn.com, which is the Fortune.
Right.
It's a blog. The third story down is about this, and they have a beautiful PNG graphic.
Philip Elmer DeWitt wrote this. Yeah, he probably wrote this for... well, I guess he wrote it for Fortune.
Down, that one.
The effect of holding an iPhone 4.
And then scroll down.
The title. There it is.
Nice chart, which shows how many bars versus power, and what gripping it, how that drops the power, but doesn't always change the bars.
Yep.
Huh.
Amazing.
Well, I predict in about a month we're not going to be talking about this anymore. It'll be.
Yeah.
This is from actually from the non-tech story that we quoted earlier, Steve, which is, I think it sounds like you would agree as well, Spencer, that that's really the best story on this whole subject. Besides your own postings.
I mean, because they were able to hack in and get the DBM to bars relationship.
Yeah, they had access to that data.
Yeah, they had good information, but we still don't know anything about the time constant, and who knows what software is going to be behind the bars now. I mean, Apple's figuring out a way to make people happy by giving them lots of bars,
adding a fudge factor.
I just hope they have a red and a green light.
that should be.
But then how would you see it when you're talking on the phone, which of course is the problem.
But here, now that you bring it up, this is my
when
this
I'm
is my
talking
Samsung.
on the phone, I will know whether or not my call has been dropped. Will I not?
People do tend to talk for a long time before they realize.
This is a Samsung from days of yore, and there's the bar right there in the upper left corner.
Yep, it's always been that way.
And the Nokia, I have a Nokia sitting here. and I can't turn it on because there's not enough charge. But this had the same bars right up on the screen.
I used to have that phone. Yeah.
Yeah, and this phone has look, an antenna and something you don't see.
Yeah.
You don't actually use this, Spencer, do you? Is this your phone?
I just stare at it.
I was going to say.
This was my phone, but I didn't have but external antenna connector right below the antenna. You see a little hole?
Oh,
right
yeah,
there?
yeah. Boy, that's
and this was let's see in my
nobody does that anymore.
Nobody does that anymore. It's amazing. And just to bring our history back to 40 years ago, Steve, you recognize what this is? This, before there were cell phones, there were handheld UHF radios.
Oh, yeah,
this is
sure.
The classical Motorola HT220.
Yeah.
And there was no denying there was an antenna. Yeah. And even back then, you'd see cops holding it like this.
Yep. You call that an antenna? Right. Remember to think of the antennas we used to have on those Angry Nines that I used to have a corporal carry for me in Korea in the artillery. It's a goddamn backpack radio for artillery forward observer. The radio was enormous. And the antenna was a big whip that stuck up and advertised to everybody in the world, mortar me. So,
yeah,
mortar me.
I'm sure if somebody back then said, "Hey, let's come up with a way to stick this antenna inside the box," they would have been sent to the funny farm. Yeah, well, you would have loved it, but you also would have been cooking hamburgers on it.
Yeah, no kidding. Guys, we just got another great half hour. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to keep it around. We'll show it in replays. You guys are just great. We have to do this again very soon. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Leo.
Lots of fun.
One last thing. What software are you using for doing all this? Because this worked just wonderfully.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting, kind of mishmash of stuff. The switcher that I use is called a TriCaster, and it's remember the video toaster folks? Basically, they kind of, yes. And then they became Play, and now it's a company called New Tech, and they make it's a shuttle-sized box running Windows XP. It's got some hardware on it. Mostly it's software. They're updating
Kiki
it.
Still involved with
Kiki Stockhammer came by the other day, and she's still gorgeous. She's kind of semi-involved with them. She was
the most effective demonstrator I have ever
kidding
from all of those shows.
We'll always remember Kiki Stockhammer, absolutely. Yeah. And then so that's the switcher, and we have 5 cameras in here. But what you're also seeing is something that Colleen Kelly, my old engineer, who's now gone on to Google, Bigger and Better Things, built, which she called it the Skypeosaurus. It's really just 4 PCs with 4 screens, because Skype won't let you video conference with multiple videos. So each of you are on your own Skype account, and we have a 9 megabit symmetric pipe for that, so that we have plenty of bandwidth for that going out. And it just, it works great.
It works.
People like ESPN were calling Colleen saying, "How do you do that? We want to do that." So it's a fantastic setup. Skype's turned out to be a real boon for my business.
That's what Dvorak and I wanted to do 20 years ago, but we never managed to make it happen. Yeah.
Well,
we were going to do an alternate viewpoint sort of. John and I are pretty good friends, but we fight like hell when we're in public if we can.
I tried to get him on the show, and he just never responded. And I think he's just on vacation. But if you guys wanted to do that on the TWiT network, we could set you up. We could put you to 2 different screens. I'd wander off and let you take over.
Talk to John and see if he's interested.
I bet he would be. I bet he would be. I'd sure be interested in that.
Okay.
But this works pretty well. What really happened was technology finally caught up with all of those ideas, and we can do, with consumer electronics, fairly inexpensively, we can do some pretty amazing things. You ought to see
Sounds like it's pretty complicated what you do, though. You have to have a different PC for each account, and then got the master one that's doing it all, and
look at all those little buttons down there in front of Leo. How does he know what?
We don't edit this stuff. We do a little bit. It's what's happening also while we're talking is we're recording the video. I record an audio multi-track, which we don't use anymore. We used to use for the audio podcast. We also now record onto a SAN. So we have a storage area network upstairs that's connected via fiber optic to down here, and we're recording directly into the SAN and Final Cut. Final Cut's doing the recording. What's nice is as soon as I press end, the editors upstairs can immediately, they've already got it in Final Cut. And all they do is they chop off the beginning and the end. They put some stuff in. We put it out pretty much live to tape.
They have a little more work on this one, don't they?
All they're gonna have to bleep the profanities, but that's about it. And we don't edit much. We really try not to. I try to do everything live to tape to save money and time. So we'll put this out pretty much as is, except for those bleeps. Daniel's
pretty well doing what I sort of had imagined I'd be doing by about the turn of the century, but
it takes 10 years longer than you think.
Yeah.
How do we find those videos on YouTube, Leo?
Which videos are you looking for?
The little cartoon characters from Best Buy.
Oh, God, aren't those great? If you just look at Apple versus Evo, I think you'll probably find it pretty quickly.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they were funny. So, yeah, by now, Jerry, I've probably spent $100,000 or more in hardware on this stuff. Mostly the cost, though, is staff. We have 10 full-time staffers here.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But we're doing about $3 million in revenue this year through advertising, so it's profitable and it's growing nicely. And the goal is to be 24/7.
Well, you have become what Dvorak and I between us were at one time.
Well, it's funny because John gave me my start. You were my inspiration, and John gave me my start. So I feel a very close bond to both of you, and I still work with you both, which is a real honor for me. And I think so. And I'm sure that there's some kid watching right now. We had about 6 people. You didn't see this because they're behind the cameras. There were about 6 or 7 people. There was a whole family in here, a couple of guys who came to visit. So we had about 6 or 7 people in here watching the show. And the 2 of them, young guys in their mid-20s, they said, when we were teenagers, we were 13, we watched the screensavers, and that's why we're in tech now. So I think that's exactly what happens, is that there'll be another generation. Jerry is going to come along, and they're going to do this better and better and better. And I think that the goal, though, is to take away broadcasting from the big broadcasters so that we can do this kind of niche stuff that no network would ever run. No network would ever run any of this stuff.
It's worth a whole twit on the subject of just what is going to happen to the news and newspapers and publishing and all this network stuff, which is just changed irrevocably by technology now. I'm sure the iPad is the biggest impact it's going to have. Is it going to kill most of the magazines?
Well, it's funny because they think it's their hope, their great hope. I was talking to the guy who designed Pop.
Oh, it will, but I mean as paper magazines.
As paper, yes.
Right.
It will bring the magazines back in the sense that you will have them. But most magazines don't realize that their product isn't a piece of paper. It's the information. It's the output of the brains of their editorial staff.
It's the content.
Right.
Yeah. Newspapers have completely forgotten that.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where newspapers will do things like reduce the size of the print and do anything to infuriate the reader, as if readers don't count. So, and pretty soon they won't, because they won't have any.
Right.
But the important thing is all those editorial staff, including newspapers that I don't like, it's still important that there be an editorial staff of people who go out there and actually get the story.
Get the news, yes. I agree. We spent a lot of time talking about that, Jeff. We do a number of shows. Jeff Jarvis is one of our regulars on This Week in Google, and that's his beat. We have Jay Rosen, Clay Shirky. We talk a lot about the future of news on this network. That's something we're very interested in, so I agree with you on that. And I don't know if there's an answer. I mean, it's obviously changing rapidly.
Well, the real question is, who is going to pay the reporters to do something for an iPod?
Well, this is it. I was at Foo Camp. Tim O'Reilly has a camp every year by invitation up at the O'Reilly Media, and Stephen Levy he was of Newsweek, now he's of Wired magazine, and Kevin Kelly is a senior editor of Wired, had a session they called The Future of News, and Stephen Levy says, I do slow news. I take 6 years to write a book, but one of the things Kevin Kelly said, I think Kevin's a very smart fella, is that the money will follow attention. So as long as people, as long as there's demand, there'll be money to be made. And I think this is a good example. Who would have thought podcasts could make any money? But as long as there's an audience for it, there's a chance to make revenue. I believe.
I think you're right.
And so it just.
I admire what you've done.
Well, just I'm having fun doing it, and it's such a privilege.
Hear.
Such a privilege to get people on like you guys. So thank you. And I tell you, now we're still broadcasting. I should have warned you. We never stop. And the audience is loving this. And one of the points they're making in the chat room is if this had been network television, this would all have been off the air because we got to move on. But we can keep going.
And you
as
could
long
even
as
do
my
an
wife
ad
says
spot
I
right
could
now.
stay out here, we can keep going.
As long as Spencer's wife lets us, we can continue. I like the backdrop. Are you on your lawn? Where are you? Are you outside?
No, I'll drop it for you. It's my office.
Oh, I love it.
And we were getting, when the sun was up, the light was really awful. So I had to do a few things.
The black, normally I love what Jerry does and what Steve does. I love seeing people's environments, right? But it's often very hard to light, and it's also very hard for compression. So having a black backdrop really actually helps your picture considerably.
Yeah.
Although Steve's got a great picture. Most of it's pretty static. I guess that's why.
I guess mine is really complicated, isn't it?
Oh, I love. You know what, Jerry? Everybody in the chat room
looks like reality.
Staring at your library. I meant to ask you how many books you think you have in there.
I've lost count.
I love it. It's exactly what you would imagine Jerry Pournelle's office would look like. Just a library full of books. I love it.
Well,
Perfect.
what you don't get to see is my desk,
I love that too.
which is kind of horrible.
No.
And this is a failure.
What is that?
It's a shoulder bag that I hoped would be just right, but it is not quite big enough. It needs to be just a little bigger. I predict that this kind of shoulder bag for men is coming back. The iPad will produce it.
There's
Change in fashion.
There's a company that makes, who is it? There's a company that makes a travel bag for the iPad that's specifically designed for the iPad, has room for a Bluetooth keyboard and lots of pencils and other stuff. Who makes it?
Yep.
I can't
I
remember
have
the name.
Bluetooth keyboard.
Yeah.
Works like a charm. I mean, really works.
Oh,
Like
it's
the
it's,
whole
it's
company-
are you talking about
and
the one that
use
I've got that comes with a little stand?
Yeah,
built
what
in?
is the name of that?
I have this stand.
What do you think of that, Jerry? I've seen that.
I
You-
love it. It's
yeah.
called a lap-worked recliner. They sent it to me. It just suddenly appeared in my mail. And I thought, well, I'll try it with the iPad. And I love it. It props up just right. And the keyboard sits right in front of it. You can see the whole mess sitting there. on
Look
the
at that. Does
table.
look nice, doesn't it? That's a nice setup.
And it's easy to use, and you can actually work with it a lot. No, I can do a lot. I just love the iPad. I don't think it's the final. There will be
Oh, yeah.
2 or 3 more versions, but this thing is the way the world is going. I am
And the
convinced of it.
Bluetooth keyboard, it makes such a difference because you've got all the buttons you want instead of having to do so much shifting, which is really annoying on the touch keyboard on the iPad.
But really, Jerry, do you really think that men are going to carry purses?
They did it once. Remember, shoulder bags used to be fairly fashionable.
Really?
Yeah, you don't remember that, but there was a time when every Italian businessman had a bag about like
Well,
this.
that's Italians. They don't
Well,
count.
No, in the United States too.
Really?
there
I
you go,
carried
Jerry,
one for
setting
a very
fashion
long-
trends again.
I used to carry my HP tablet PC in a shoulder bag,
Really?
rather than having a full briefcase.
Who makes that travel case that you use, Steve? I'm not sure if that's the one or not.
It's the one.
It's not Griffin.
Apple
It's not
sells it.
Marware.
It's down in the. It's. I've got it in the car. It's not Marware, and I like it because it's got a pocket for the pad. It's got a cool little stand that's built in, and then it also has like room for the Bluetooth keyboard and everything. It's a like travel case or something.
Let me search because I remember looking at it. And I have another. InCase makes it.
InCase, yes.
InCase makes it. And I have another one of their cases. And that, but does that have a handle or not?
Yes, it's got sort of a modest handle. It's just a strip of
But it holds
cloth.
it, and it has a little stand that comes with, and it has.
Yeah, the stand is fantastic. Because I mean, lots of people have iPads now, and people there. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that little stand, it's got the 2 different sides have a slightly different gap. So one reclines the iPad more than the other. But people come over and say, "Where'd you get that stand? I want one of those stands." And unfortunately, as far as I know, the only places right now is with along with that little traveler InCase.
InCase, you should send Jerry one, and he'll review it, I'm sure.
I was just going to take a note on that.
Goincase.com.
And it's like they designed it for the Bluetooth keyboard too, because it's got a Velcro pocket separate from everything else that the Bluetooth keyboard just fits into perfectly.
And does it come with the combo?
Contact with them, let them know, or I can.
I don't, Jerry, because I buy everything.
I used to,
That's
but Winston probably, or I might even buy one. Depends. Travel kit. With,
I don't think it's very expensive. Yeah, $59.95. But, you know, you shouldn't have to buy it because, first of all, you're Jerry Pournelle. And second of all, it may not be just what you want. So, you know, it's not. Does it have a shoulder strap, Steve? It doesn't, does it?
No, it doesn't.
But it'd be easy to put one on.
I think so. It looks like it's got little hooks there or something.
It's nice, too, because the one pocket that's got one zipper, it's tight enough that I never even close the zipper. I slide it in, and it grips the iPad very tightly.
I should get one of these. Because I don't travel that much with the iPad. I just carry it around.
I bet it would hold this too.
What's that?
That's the old-fashioned log.
What do they call that, Jerry? I've never seen that.
It's paper.
Do you have a shelf with all of those logbooks?
I do indeed.
Oh man,
I do indeed.
Smithsonian's got a call. I remember you talking about writing in your logbook in Chaos Manor in the column.
I write in the logbook and I paste things into it. I Scotch tape stuff into it, which means that I have a file of, I don't know, even old movie tickets and things. It just makes everything chronological.
I wonder if that kind of thing will survive. I have a hunch it will, even though temporarily anyway we've all gone to bits.
Well, the iPad may or may not replace my logbook. We'll see. If it had a stylus, it probably would.
I think people need something textural. I think they want to hold that ticket or that.
But yeah, and for instance, the airline tickets, if I'm going on an airline, I put them in this logbook and I can pull it out, hand it to them to swipe on their barcode reader and put it back in again. Mm-hmm. Of course, in my day, you didn't have any portable computers, so this was what you were going to have whether you liked it or not.
That was it. That was a choice.
I got in the habit of it. No, I've got 1 or 2 or 3 per year for the last 30 years.
All right, I'm gonna let y'all go because I gotta go.
We could go forever.
We could. This is a show and a half. I mean, this is fantastic stuff. I hate to end it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank y'all. Take care. Take care, Steve.
Amazing.